It's pretty commonly thought that procrastination at its core is nothing more than a characteristic trait of laziness, or maybe a lack of interest in the tasks we should be doing. But is this really the case? If you asked yourself right now, what's the reason you keep procrastinating? The most likely answer you would give yourself is that you wish to avoid the pain and discomfort of doing something you don't like. Seems sensible, right? Yet psychologists have discovered that procrastinating actually causes us even more pain and discomfort than the completion of these unpleasant tasks that we keep putting off. And it makes perfect sense, too. Think about it. If you have a presentation to prepare, but don't like doing the research for it, you'll probably go and find something more pleasurable to do instead, like surfing the web, for example. But here's the problem. Even though you now seem to be enjoying yourself, deep down you know that you should be working on your presentation instead of wasting your precious time on 9gag. And the fact that you know this makes you feel even worse. Now here's the interesting part. Most of us are well aware of this, but it still doesn't keep us from procrastinating. So what's going on here? Why do we keep putting things off, even though we fully acknowledge that in the long run it causes us much more pain, much more discomfort, and much more unhappiness? The answer to that question can be found inside our brains. As it turns out, the human brain is literally wired for procrastination. To better understand this, let's have a look at the functions of two key areas of the human brain that are involved in this process: the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system is one of the oldest and most dominant regions of our brain. This is where the fight or flight response comes from. When somebody pulls a knife on you, it tells you to run. And if you happen to find yourself standing in the middle of a bonfire, it tells you to get out and quickly. Simply put, one of the main purposes of the limbic system is to keep us safe and eliminate pain. Unfortunately, it also means that it keeps us from working on unpleasant tasks, because it sees those tasks as pain, something to be avoided at all costs. Now, let's have a look at the prefrontal cortex. This is a much newer, less developed, and weaker part of the brain. This part is responsible for planning, decision-making, and willpower. It's what allows us to digest and analyze information and make better decisions based on that information. This is where long-term planning takes place. Prefrontal cortex is what separates us, humans, from animals, who are simply controlled by stimulus. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Anytime the reward for the task at hand feels abstract or not immediate, the limbic region of the brain overrides the prefrontal cortex. But why? Well, there's evolutionary reasons for that. But what you really need to know is this. The limbic system runs on autopilot. It's always there, kicked into high gear, constantly ready to save us from all the pain and danger that's in the world. In fact, it only takes about 1/30th of a second for it to react and tell us whether it perceives the planned task as rewarding one or something to be avoided. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, works very differently. There's nothing automatic about it, and it takes a full 3 seconds for it to start. And even then, it's you who must consciously start it up, and it's you who must keep it going. The very second you stop from consciously being engaged in a task, your limbic system automatically takes over and you give in to what feels good in the moment: procrastination. Your limbic system is simply trying to save you from the pain of doing the tasks that it perceives as unpleasant. And unfortunately, that includes any task that hasn't got an immediate reward in sight. So, at its core, procrastination really just boils down to a battle between those two brain regions: the limbic system that tries to keep us safe from pain, and the prefrontal cortex, where we create and store our long-term desires. So now the question becomes, what's the solution here? How could you override this self-sabotaging mechanism of your brain and actually start controlling it instead of being a slave to it? Well, there's 3 specific things that you can do not to just override it, but to actually reverse this process and make it work for you instead of against you. I will reveal those 3 things to you in my next video. So make sure to hit the subscribe button right now and stay tuned, because this stuff really does work. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.